This week on Culture Q,
queer superheroes steal the spotlight.
We chat with SNL's Bowen Yang.
And trans Admiral Rachel Levine makes history.
As always, it's Andy Lawani here.
And I'm Shira Lazar. This is Culture Q.
And here are some of the highlights this week in queer culture. Now, there has never been a better time to be a queer nerd because so many comic book properties are adding LGBTQ heroes to their roster. Last week, DC Comics released a new issue of Nubia and the Amazons, a Wonder Woman adjacent project, and revealed the first Amazonian trans character. The character, named Bia, is a black trans woman serving as a fierce warrior on Paradise Island, and is set to play an exciting role in the new story. The comics writer Stephanie Williams tweeted, "Bia will have a role beyond just existing. She's a fully fledged character that is important to her community, just as black trans women are important to us in real life." And for all the haters out there, OG Wonder Woman Linda Carter has a message. Trans women are Wonder Woman. End of story. This news just comes weeks after the new Superman, Clark Kent's son, John Kent, was revealed to be bisexual ahead of the upcoming issue of Superman, Son of Kal-El. Following in his father's footsteps of dating journalists, the new installment will see Kent strike up a same-sex romantic relationship with reporter Jay Nakamura. And the news was met with a lot of excitement alongside the typical amount of conservative whining. But Amber Ruffin said,
"If a comic book character being bisexual ruined your childhood was trash to begin with."
But the sweep of the gay tide is not just happening in the DC Comics universe, it's happening in the industry as a whole. In Marvel's upcoming film, The Eternals, we'll see Brian Tyree Henry as Phastos, the first openly gay hero, joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe. At the film's premiere, Kevin Feige, the mastermind behind the Marvel Cinematic Universe, shared his excitement about the new direction of this upcoming batch of Marvel films.
There have been gay heroes before in the comics. It is more than pastime in the movies, and it's just the start.
We've already seen Tom Hiddleston's Loki confirm his bisexuality in the Disney Plus series, and are set to see more queerness on screen by characters like Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie in the upcoming Thor: Love and Thunder, and Xochitl Gomez as lesbian superhero American Chavez in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And Bicon Kristen Stewart, who recently expressed interest in playing a female Joker. She had this to say about all the fanboys who aren't on board with this new inclusive future for heroes.
"If you're happier and more comfortable looking in the rear view mirror, that is where we will leave you, bruh."
To find all these, go to your local comic book store and check out Marvel's The Eternals on November 5th when it hits theaters.
Well, if you thought the Dave Chappelle Netflix saga was over, get ready for episode 2, Attack of the TERFs. Last Wednesday, Netflix's Trans Employee Resource Group staged a walkout in protest of the comedian's special, The Closer. And staying consistent, Netflix fired an employee who was helping to organize it. How do they continue to get this so wrong? The employee in question, B. Pagels Minor, a trans, black, and currently pregnant individual, was accused of leaking viewership metrics along with the price Netflix paid for streaming rights. But Pagels Minor, who firmly denies the claim, didn't let their termination stop them from continuing the fight for trans rights and visibility. At the protest, they were quoted saying, "I want my child to grow up in a world where they see that their parent, a black trans person, is valued and that I am an important person." And not surprisingly, the protest had counter-protesters who showed up with these signs: "Team TERF, Dave is funny," and "Cancel culture sucks." But trans Netflix employee Tara Field, who was fired and quickly rehired after sharing her frustrations on Twitter, shared a post on Medium reiterating that canceling Chappelle is not the goal here. Dave is not and has never been the cause of this problem. He is a symptom of the culture we live in, a culture that marginalizes and devalues trans people. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. Protesters are not asking for the special to be taken down. This is more about Netflix and our culture as a whole. Here's activist Ashley Marie Preston, the organizer of the protest.
It isn't just about Netflix, it's about a corporate culture that manipulates the algorithmic sciences to distort the way that we perceive ourselves and one another.
And I actually spoke to Pagels Minor on my radio show, Let's Go There on Channel Q, about the changes that they hope that Netflix will make.
I want them to take action on the very reasonable list of asks that the Transtar community has. The entire ask list is invest in content, hire people, be more thoughtful.
And actually, the employees found a lot of support for these proposed changes from stars like Queer Eye's Johnathan Van Ness, and Pose writer-producer Our Lady J.
I value your courage in keeping the conversation going so that we can create more leadership positions for trans and non-binary folks in our industry.
So far, though, Netflix has yet to formally address last Wednesday's events. But Chappelle has released a new apology-free stand-up video commenting on the controversy, saying, "I said what I said." And while he did admit that the LGBTQ community is not at fault here, he still centers himself as the victim in this situation.
And if you want to meet with me, I'd be more than willing to, but I have some conditions. You have to answer the question, am I canceled or not?
So yeah, the fight for change definitely continues. As B. Pagel's Minor wrote in their Washington Post op-ed, we in the trans community know this is a marathon, and we will never stop fighting for equity and respect. Let this backlash be a lesson.
This week, we got the chance to sit down with SNL's newest breakout star, Bowen Yang, and talk to him about his experience on the show and his win at the Queer-oes Awards. Thank you for joining us. Listen, I'm gagging, I'm freaking out. We have Bowen Yang. How are you, darling?
Hi, Andy, I'm good. How are you?
Somehow alive. And also, you're awake somehow. Do you sleep? Like, what is the schedule for SNL?
No matter what the schedule is, my sleep is contingent on if the dogs downstairs in my neighbor's apartment bark.
I can understand that. You just came off of a big weekend. Congratulations also, you're back in season 2 for you of SNL. What does it feel like?
It feels nice. I never think numerically in terms of it because I started 3 seasons ago writing and then did 2 seasons on cast. Everyone's like, is this your 3rd year? Is this your 4th? And I go, the answer is yes. I don't know.
Did you enjoy, or maybe you still do, a mix of both writing versus also acting in SNL?
I think being on the cast sort of demands that you write. I love it all. I mean, performing is nice because it's like, you know, eating your own meal that you've cooked. Whereas like writing feels like you're in the back of a kitchen in a restaurant, like making a meal for someone else.
You just come off of a nomination. First of all, congratulations. And a lot of people are like pegging you of like, oh my God, we see like great representation of people of SNL. Like, do you resonate with a statement like that right now?
For sure, yeah. And like, it's always been this way in some sense. There is something for everybody. I really always think about how there have always been queer people at SNL. You know, for a long time, there were fun little dog whistles or like little winks at the audience of like, this is probably written by a queer person. Terry Sweeney and James Anderson, who was a writer, Paula Pell, Chris Kelly, Sarah Schneider, Jeremy Byler, Julia Torres, Sam J. I'm really thinking about how comedy and humor, what people find funny is this thing that isn't really defined. And I think that's my favorite thing about comedy is that like not everyone agrees on what funny is.
Have you had any like big pressure moments?
Yeah, I mean, the Pride Month sketch we wrote last March after the Atlanta spa shootings, there was a lot of talk about how we would address it. There was this idea that I would go on Weekend Update as myself, which I hadn't done before and which was very nerve-wracking. And like, I wouldn't say I felt pressure, but it was that thing where I wanted to do it some justice.
Do you have like a favorite moment or like a moment you walked off stage and like, I would do it again?
Oh my God, so many. I mean, I got slapped around by Regina King last season and I was like, I would let her dumb me into full submission in any situation. I mean, every week is so different. It meets the level that the host is at.
Also, aside from SNL though, you're a part of a podcast. For people who don't know about Las Culturitas, what is it about and what can you educate them on?
Yeah, it's a very loose, silly podcast generally about pop culture, but specifically about like the sundry things that queer people consume, whether it's we talk about diva worship or we talk about queer cinema outside of that, music, art, fashion, like all of it. It's co-hosted by me and my best friend and also really funny comedian and actor, Matt Rogers.
Have you learned anything in the past year or two that you think has really helped you in your personal life or your career?
Oh my gosh, yeah, definitely. I've probably learned things that I haven't even like been able to verbalize yet. I think about SNL as like a microcosm for like showbiz. If you sort of really steep yourself in like the losses and the wins and like it's kind of not super sustainable. So you kind of have to like think long term or even medium term. Like how do I keep myself steady? That's just very personal to me, but like I think anyone can sort of hopefully relate to that.
We're also here to talk about your being honored with the Revry Visibility Award.
I mean, it's such a huge honor, and like to share it with so many people, you know, it just makes me sort of feel some sense of community even more than I already did. I mean, I came into this platform at SNL already knowing like who I admired, who my friends were, who I wanted to collaborate with, and then to be able to scope that out, I'm just overall just very blessed.
That's pretty much it I have here. Thank you so much for taking like the time to talk to me. Also, congrats on the Revry Visibility Award. Congrats on nominations, and world domination is to come next.
Oh my gosh. I hope not, for everyone's sake, that I don't dominate anything.
Thank you so much, Bowen, for sitting and talking with us on your one day off. And if you want to listen to everything that Bowen has to say, check out his podcast, Las Culturistas, every Wednesday, and you can catch him on SNL.
After a lot of meh news coming out of the US these past few weeks, we finally have something to celebrate. Last week, Assistant Secretary of Health Dr. Rachel Levine made history once again as she was sworn in as an admiral, the highest ranking official in the US Public Health Service Commission Corps. This makes her not only the first transgender 4-star officer, but also makes her the first woman to don the title across any of the United States' 8 uniformed services.
This is a momentous occasion, and I am honored to take this role for the impact that I can make and for the historic nature of what it symbolizes.
And this is not the first time that Levine has been recognized as a trailblazer. Just this March, she became the first transgender official to be confirmed by the Senate, and of course comes after decades of hard work. She has also been recognized for her work as a pediatrician and as Pennsylvania's health secretary, guiding them through an opioid crisis and taking up efforts to reduce maternal mortality and increase child immunizations. In her new role in the Health Corps, she'll be responsible for responding to anything from national disasters to making COVID-19 vaccines available to communities across the country. So I guess Dolly Parton isn't the only pandemic queen anymore. But of course, surprising no one, Levine's appointment was met with some resistance among right-wing trolls. Republican Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Banks, who suck, took to Twitter to purposefully misgender the new admiral and attempted to discount her accomplishments, a move that gave Banks a suspension in Twitter jail. But thankfully, Levine has found plenty of support as well. Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra made a statement saying that Admiral Levine is a cherished and critical partner in our work to build a healthier America, and that the historic appointment as the first openly transgender 4-star officer is a giant step forward towards equality as a nation.
I stand on the shoulders of those LGBTQ+ individuals who came before me, both those known and unknown. May this appointment today be the first of many more to come as we create a diverse and more inclusive future.
Well, we here at Culture Q salute you, Admiral Levine. Now back to you, Andy.
Thanks, Shira. And now that we've seen what's going on along the stateside, let's take a look and see what's happening in the news around the world. Tensions in Ghana are rising as lawmakers are set to debate a recently proposed bill that has left queer Ghanaians worried about their futures. While homosexuality is already illegal in the country, the promotion of proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values bill would restrict things even further. If the bill is passed, it would criminalize things as small as being an ally, possessing sex toys, and even same-sex people holding hands. President of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, recently spoke with radio station Peace FM, urging tolerance over the matter and civil debate. He stated, "What I would hope is that we will recognize the need for us to be tolerant of each other when there are opposing views." Though his stance on it seems pretty clear.
We'll come out of all this, even it will protect the culture and values of our people and the Ghanaian identity.
While the Parliament of Ghana has no official date set for the debate, human rights organizations like Ratify Ghana are doing all they can to stop the law from going into effect. And over in Russia, Vladimir Putin sent out a very clear anti-trans message. During a speech in Sochi, Putin said that any kind of education surrounding the existence of trans individuals would be on the verge of a crime against humanity, which is rich coming from a literal war criminal. He continued saying that advocacy for trans rights could threaten basic things such as mother, father, family, or gender differences. and urged the need for, quote, spiritual values and historical traditions. As upsetting as this is, none of this is too surprising as Russia has, again, a long history of anti-LGBT behavior. In the past year, we've seen hateful anti-LGBTQ propaganda surfacing, including a viral political ad aimed against queer parents. And it was just earlier this month that Andrei Saiganov, a senior government official, suggested that all LGBTQ organizations should be labeled as, quote, extremist groups. Meanwhile, Putin ended this recent rant acknowledging that while other parts of the world are progressing, Russia should reject the West's social-cultural disturbances. Finally, as the Taliban's rule in Afghanistan worsens, a new policy coming from the UK makes escape even slimmer for some people. The UK's Conservative Party's Nationality and Borders Bill claims it's trying to make the asylum system fairer by introducing new and tougher criminal offenses for those attempting to enter the UK illegally. Lila Zadeh, executive director of Rainbow Migration, an organization that helps LGBTQ people gain asylum, warns that the bill will criminalize people for trying to seek safety and make it much harder for them to secure refugee status and rebuild their lives in the UK. It's especially concerning because there are more reports of Afghanistan violence happening against LGBTQ people. Last week, a man simply referred to as Sohail was attacked when trying to obtain a copy of his birth certificate and passport, getting burned with boiling water by a member of the Taliban. He shared, "I'd live like a prisoner. After the Taliban attacked me, I couldn't live in my house because they would recognize my face and they knew who I am," he told Pink News. He also shared his disappointment for the global queer community, adding, "I had hoped the LGBTQ community would help us, but they are totally gone. No one is listening. No one is looking out for us." But people in the UK are not done fighting, taking to the streets to protest the controversial new bill in hopes of welcoming people like Sohail to safety as refugees.
Well, now it's time for some much-needed Culture Q inspiration. Last week, Jamie Lee Curtis got candid about her daughter Ruby coming out as trans, and it is honestly so heartwarming. The Halloween Kills star and her daughter talked with People magazine about what life has been like since Curtis's interview earlier this year, where she first revealed Ruby's gender identity. Curtis shared, "I am here to support Ruby. That is my job. I'm a grateful student. I'm learning so much from Ruby." And it's clear the family is close, as Curtis will be the officiant at Ruby's wedding next year.
I'm a pretty good officiant. I am. It's going to be a cosplay wedding, and I cannot tell you what my costume is.
Ruby, who has spent most of her life trying to avoid the spotlight, felt like now was the right time to be visible, to set a positive example of a trans-inclusive family. She said, "It was intimidating, but I'm happy to talk about my experiences now. I'm happy to be more visible if it helps others. Helping others is something everyone should do." And her mother is no stranger to supporting the queer community and using her platform and voice to enact change.
Why is it that we don't have the Equality Act? People would be given equal representation, despite their sexual orientation or their gender.
Last year, Curtis announced she would be directing and starring in a biopic based on the founder of the Free Mom Hugs, after she discovered the organization, which supports children with conservative and unaccepting families.
That may be the most beautiful act of kindness and love and acceptance I had ever heard.
And now she gets to take all that knowledge and activism and practice it at home. As Ruby added, "While they have been so accepting of me my entire life, they finally get to see who I've always been inside." I just love that.
And with that happy news, we are leaving you this week. It's Andy Lawani signing off here.
And I'm Shira Lazar. Thank you again for hanging out with us.
And be sure to catch Culture Q each Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, live and on demand, only on Revry.